Okay, good evening, everybody. Give me one more second. Okay, good evening. It's Monday night. We're in Parshat Toldot. So, let's start. Okay, now, we mentioned briefly last week that Yitzhak didn't come to his mother's funeral, and after the Akedah, Avraham Avinu came back himself. And we said last week what happened to Yitzhak. So one opinion says he went to the yeshiva Shem V'Ever. Another opinion says he went to Ganeden for 2 years. And that's where when Eliezer went to Rivka and they met Yitzhak in the field, so Yitzhak was coming down, the Medrash says, head first, he was coming, crash landing from Ganeden back down to earth. This concept that he was away for 2 years in Ganeden answers a very basic question in this week's Parsha. The pasuk says, Yitzhak was 60 years old when he gave birth to the twins, to Yaakov and Esav. So, if he was 60 and Avraham Avinu was 100 years old when he gave birth to Yitzhak, so Avraham Avinu should have been 160. Okay, when Yitzhak gave birth, he should have been 160. Then the pasuk says, "A yigdul an na'arim," they became bar mitzvah. So Esav went to evil, Yaakov went to yeshiva. Okay, and the Medrash says that Avraham Avinu was supposed to live to 180, like Yitzchak. Why did he die 5 years earlier? He died 5 years earlier not to have the aggravation of seeing Esav in action. But the question is, but 2 years, in other words, Rashi, he says like this, the Daskin Baltesa says, so if Avraham Avinu was 160 when Yitzchak's kids were born, now they're bar mitzvah, so Yaakov Avinu is 173, right? If he's 173 and he died at 175, that means 2 years Esav was evil. So the Daskin Baltesa says, 2 years he was able to hide his evil. You know, he acted like he's a tzaddik or something for 2 years. But after 2 years, he couldn't fake it anymore. This is what Daskin Big does from Yerushalmi. But the question is, if he faked it for 2 years, why couldn't he fake it for another 5 years? And Avraham Avinu could have lived to 180. Okay? But based on what we're saying now, it answers the whole issue. Because if Yitzchak was 2 years in Ganeden, 2 years in Ganeden, he didn't age. In Ganeden, you don't age. So, when Yitzchak was 60, Avram really was 162. Not 160. Avram Avinu was 2 years more, because Avram Avinu was down here on earth. And Avram Avinu aged. So another 2 years. Yitzchak didn't age because he was in Ganeden, and in Ganeden there's no aging. So really, according to this calculation, when Yitzchak was 60 when he gave birth to the kids, so really Avraham Avinu was not 160, it was 162. Then when the kids became bar mitzvah 13 years later, what actually happened was Avraham Avinu was stuck 175. Yitzchak was 73, but Avraham was stuck at 75. So then you don't have to answer the question that he hid it for 2 years, because that's a difficult answer. If he hid it for 2 years, he could have hid it for another few more years.
Wow.
So that, based on this concept that he was in Gan Eden for 2 years, answers this simple question, because again, when Avraham was 175, the boys were 13 and Yitzchak was only 73, but Avraham Avinu was really 175. So that answers that point. Okay. Now, at the beginning of the Parsha, the first pasuk says, Elu Toldot Yitzchak ben Avram, Avram Heledes Yitzchak. Okay? These are the generations of Yitzchak ben Avram. Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. So it's obviously redundant. If Yitzchak was the son of Avram, then Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. Okay, it's redundant. You don't have to say Yitzchak is Avram's son, and Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. Yeah, obviously, if he's his son, he gave birth to Yitzchak. So Rashi says, simple meaning, because what does it mean, Avram Heilidus Yitzchak? Because everybody was making fun of Avram Avinu. We mentioned this last week, that we said Avram Zakin, until Avram there was no aging, because Avram and Yitzchak looked identical. They looked identical. Why did he make them look identical? Because people were making fun. Avram Avinu was married to Sarah for who knows how many years and didn't have kids. And all of a sudden she's taken by Paray and by Avimelech, and all of a sudden she gets pregnant. So obviously people, the troublemakers, doesn't take too much. The troublemakers were saying, hey, she got pregnant from Avimelech, from Paray, not from Avram. So what did Hashem do? He made Yitzchak and Avram looked exactly alike. So this is what the pasuk says. Eila told us Yitzchak ben Avram, he was the child of Avram, and then it adds more. Avram Heilid is Yitzchak, that Avram, he looked exactly like Avram. So it's not redundant. That's the simple meaning. Now let's talk about a much deeper meaning of this pasuk. We know, what did Avram Avinu do for a living? He did Hachnasas Orchim, hospitality. He built an Eshel in Be'er Shava. I mean, whatever. He did a lot of good things, Avram Avinu. But his primary goal was Hachnasas Orchim. He had guests. A lot of this week's Parsha goes away with something very strange for the patriarchs. A whole thing, starting from Shlishi, okay? Yitzhak's servants dug wells, they pleased and fought it. They dug another well, they fought it. Every time he dug wells, finally he built a well, he dug a well, he called it Chayves. Ka'at Hashem hirchiv lanu parinu ba'aretz. Now Hashem finally didn't fight anymore. Okay? I mean, to talk about Yitzchak digging wells is a little bit below Yitzchak's dignity. Okay, his servants obviously dug the well. But why is the Torah elaborating so much? He dug one well, they fought. He dug another well, they fought. Finally, he dug a third well, he called Rehovot, which is, by the way, the city of Rehovot in Israel. Today is that city that Avram Avinu, where Yitzchak dug the well and they didn't fight. So why is the Torah elaborating so much on the Aved of Yitzchak digging wells? Okay? So Chassidus explains like this. There's a fundamental difference between the level of Avram Avinu and the level of Yitzchak. Avram Avinu says in the pasuk, Avraham Ohavi. Avram, the one that loved me. My friend, Ohavi, the one that loved me. Avram Avinu served Hashem with love, chesed. What is the concept of ahava? Love. Ava is the level of chesed. Now, what does it mean, chesed? When you say, I do chesed, I'm supposed to do chesed. When I do chesed to somebody else, I do him a favor. I give him achnasas orchim, hospitality. Okay? What does that mean? Right now, I'm in a better situation than you are. I'm in a better situation than you are. I have food. You're traveling. I'm home. I can have food. And I give you food. That means the concept of hospitality is, or chesed, means you are in a better situation and you're bringing it down to somebody who's a less fortunate situation than you are. Chesed is what's called milmaila lemata, from higher to lower. That's why chesed in Kabbalah is called mayim. Mayim represents, what is water? Water flows from a high place to a low place. Makam Gavaya comes from the skies, from the mountains, it comes down into the valleys. Avram's Avaida, because Avram personified the level of chesed, And like we said in a previous class, the Sefer HaBoyer, the Pardes brings down from Sefer HaBoyer, which was a very early Sefer, that the attribute of Chesed came to Hashem and said, you know what, God, since Avraham Avinu is on the earth, I'm out of business. He's doing all the Chesed possible. I'm out of it. So Avraham Avinu personified Chesed. Yitzhak, the pasuk says in this week's parsha, Pachad Yitzhak, the awe of Yitzhak. Not like Avraham Avinu is Ahava, which is Chesed, loving somebody you give Chesed. Yitzchak, on the other hand, is a level of yira, awe, fear, pachad Yitzchak. What is the level of fear in the attributes of the Sfiris? That's called gvura, severity. Okay? You fear somebody that has a tremendous amount of power. You don't love somebody that's powerful. You love somebody that's kind. That's nice. Fear is when the person has power. And that's when you have awe and fear, especially fear. So fear, that's the level of gvura. Gvura is likened to Eish, fire. Why? Because gvura, and in contrast to chesed, chesed means you're giving. Here, gvura means I'm limiting, I'm restricting. I'm doing the level what's called tzimtzum. I'm restricting, retracting limitations. That's what the level of yira is, of gevura. That's why by Yitzhak it says pachad Yitzhak. What's the concept of gevura? Milmata lamayla. Water comes from underneath the ground. When you dig a well, what happens? The water is underneath the earth. You're digging a well and the water is coming up. That is the Aveda of Yitzchak Avinu. So it's not Stam, the Torah is telling us Avram built a hotel and Yitzchak Avinu is digging wells and Yaakov Avinu is playing with colored sticks. This personifies their level. Avram was the level of Chesed, therefore he gave Achnos Sarchim. Avram Moavi. Yitzchak is the level of Pachad Yitzchak, the level of awe and fear. That's the level of fire. Fire also goes from lower to higher. That's why if you notice, Torah is called Mayim. The pasuk says, Hey kol tzamei l'chula Mayim. If you're thirsty, go to water, which means Torah. If you're thirsty for Yiddishkeit, go to Torah. And Torah is also called Eish. What does the pasuk say in Zeis HaBracha? Miminai, from God's right hand, Eish dos lomai. He gave a fiery law, Torah, to his nation. Yaakov, on the other hand, is a combination of Avraham and Yitzchak. It's a combination of Chesed and Gvura. Okay? Therefore, what is Tiferes? Tiferes is beauty. Tiferes represents a combination of Chesed and Gevura. Okay? That is, without elaborating too much, we could talk hours on this, but basically this is the concept here, which means as follows. Avraham served Hashem with love. Yitzchak served Hashem with Yira. Yaakov served Hashem with Rachamim, and we'll see about Yaakov Avinu's Aveda in this week's Parsha. But therefore, Yaakov's Aveda in Lavan's house was primarily playing with colored sticks. Colored sticks is multicolored. One color, you don't have beauty. Tiferes means beauty. You can't have beauty with one color. You need to have multiple colors blending together in harmony. Okay? Now, what's the problem with Avraham Avinu? Avraham Avinu was unlimited chesed. If Avraham Avinu was unlimited chesed, he can create a Yishmael, which in Kabbalah says was chesed of evil. If you're too kind, you can imagine a parent lets the kids do whatever they want, whatever they ask, they get, whatever. There's no discipline, no nothing. They could do whatever they want. Okay? That's no good. You create a monster. You create a monster. Avraham Avinu, his Aveda was chesed. unlimited chesed, so therefore he created a Yishmael. Yitzhak, on the other hand, was unlimited gvura, unlimited severity, strictness, limitations. Also, too strict is also no good. He created an Esav. Yaakov Avinu, which was a combination, Titein Emes Liyaakov. Emes is a combination of Chesed and Gvura. It's a beautiful blend together, and therefore all his children were tzaddikim. So therefore, the Ramban says even more, and it's brought down all over the place. The 3 wells that Yitzchak Avinu dug, and they fought over the first 2. Okay, as the pasuk calls them, they fought, and they called Asek, and they called Sitna. And then finally he dug a 3rd well, and that was called Rechavis. So the Ramban says very interestingly, these wells that Yitzchak dug correspond with the 3 Bati Mikdashes, the 3 temples. The first one they fought, that was the destruction of the first one. Second one they fought, that was the destruction of the second. The third one, the 3rd Beis HaMikdash, that's going to be permanent. That's the level. Over there, there's no fighting. Mashiach comes, there's no more issues of fighting and war and battle and anything else that exists in the world. Okay, so this the Aveda, and therefore the Torah is actually elaborating on the Aveda of Yitzchak about digging wells, because that was his Aveda. Now, seemingly, if that's the case, Avram and Yitzchak are opposites. So how can Avram give birth to Yitzchak? If Avram is the epitome of chesed, Yitzchak is the epitome of severity, which was the opposite. So the pasuk says no. Elo told this Yitzchak ben Avram, Avram heard this Yitzchak. Why? Because in Kadusha, there is unity. You have Sfiras Ha'omer, right? The 49 days. The first day is Chesed Sheba Chesed, Gvura Sheba Chesed. Then the second week is Gvura. You have Chesed Sheba Gvura, Gvura Sheba Gvura. In Kedusha, there's unity. In evil, there is no unity. So even though, conceptually, Avram and Yitzchak, and Yaakov will leave, but Avram and Yitzchak are opposites, nevertheless, in Kedusha, they're all one. Yitzchak is Ben Avram, and Avram gives birth to Yitzchak. They don't contradict. Why? Why is that? So the explanation is very simple. You have that, we learned this concept, but here's where it's basically. You have in music, you have in sports, you have in the human body, you have in art. Okay? And you have in life. Life we'll get to in a second. The body of a person is composed of a head, a heart, hands, feet, different parts. Head is cold, intellect is cold. The heart is warm. Feelings, warmth. Physically, the heart is warm and the brain is cold. How do they get along? The answer is because in Kadusha, the head doesn't feel I'm a head, and the heart doesn't feel I'm a heart. In Kadusha, there is a goal. And whatever it takes to get to the goal, I am willing to do. There's no me. It's what is the purpose? What is the goal? What is the mission of all this? So a person in a body knows, I want to be a healthy body. If I need to be healthy, that's the goal. So the head doesn't say, hey, I'm not tolerating the heart, I'm going to be fighting the heart, and the heart's going to say, I'm going to fight the head, even though they're opposites. Why not? Because in a healthy body, like we learned many times, you don't feel your stomach if you're healthy. You don't feel your head if you're healthy. Right? If you have a headache, you start feeling your head, that means you're sick. You have a pain in the stomach, that means you're sick. In Kadusha, there's a goal, elokus. Okay? You have in sports, there are different positions. Okay, most people are into basketball in California at least. Not where I came from, but now people here are in basketball. In basketball, if every guy in the team would say, no, I don't care about anybody, I'm going to make the most shots. They'll never win a game. There's no me making the shot, you making the shot. It's us making the shot. So when there's bittul to the cause, when there's bittul, subjugation and nullification to the cause, that there's no me, there's the cause, then everybody gets along. There's no contradiction. And that's why in art, contrasting colors blend together in harmony. In a symphony, contrasting instruments play together and it sounds beautiful. Why? Because there's nobody sticking out, oh, there's me. It's all about us. And that's what it is in Kadusha. And the same thing, by the way, let me tell you something. In let's call this Jewish business, Jewish politics. You know, you're making a shul is making, or a school is making a function, a banquet, yeah? And you have people working on the banquet. Any person that's into it for his own glory and honor, get him off. Because then it's all about me. It's all about me. You're not going to worry about the banquet. You want to work on the banquet. It doesn't matter. I get the honor. You get the... Who cares? We want the banquet to be successful. Who cares if I get the credit, you get the credit? Who cares? That's not what it's all about. It's not about me getting the credit. And that's why in Kadusha, that's the way it works. And therefore Avram can give birth to Yitzhak, even though Avram is chesed and he's gvura. One's fire, one's water, and they're opposite. Nevertheless, they get together because there's no me, there's us. And that's why the Pasuk says, Yitzchak ben Avram and Avram Helidas Yitzchak. Not only the simple meaning that he looked alike, but also in Kadusha, Avram tolerates Yitzchak and Yitzchak tolerates. By the way, because we are the children of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, each one of us has to serve Hashem with Ava and Yira and Rachamim. We all need to have Chesed and Gvura and Tiferes. That's why we say in Shemona Esrei, Elokeinu, our God, the God of our father. Okay? Then we say, Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Why don't we just say Elokei Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov? Wasn't it the same God? In Shemona Esrei, we should say, Elokeinu, Elokei Aviseinu, Elokei Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Why do we say Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov? So the answer is that Mepharshim and the Chassidus say this also. But Chassidus elaborates. Because everyone had their own personal relationship with Hashem. Avram had Ava, Yitzchak had Yira and awe and fear, and Yaakov had Rachmim, Tiferes. So each one had their own unique relationship with Hashem. Because we are the descendants of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we all have it as a Yerusha, inheritance. So we have Avram, and we have Yitzchak, and we have Yaakov within us. Okay, next is like this. So Rivka finally, after 10 years, the davening, finally Rivka gets pregnant. So what happens? The kids are fighting within them. Like Rashi says, she walked by a church, Esav kicked to go out. She walked by a yeshiva, a shul, Yaakov kicked to go out. Okay? So she said, why what do I want this pregnancy for if they're killing me?
Yeah.
So where did she go? She went to the yeshiva Shem Ve'ever. Okay? So now it's interesting. The Mefarshim asked, why didn't she go to her father-in-law? Avram Avinu. He was the greatest guy. Okay? She should have gone to Avram Avinu and said, hey, father, whatever she called him, Shred, in Yiddish, how come I'm getting kicked? So Sifsei Chacham and others answer, Hashem hid it from Avram Avinu. Because Avram Avinu knew she's going to have two nations in her, one good and one bad. Avram Avinu is going to be upset. He didn't want that. So Hashem B'chlal took the whole thing away from Avraham Avinu. So the only one she had to go to was the yeshiva Shem Ve'eva with her tzaddikim. And they told her like this. Shnei Goyim B'vidnech, there's two kids in your stomach. They're going to kill each other, basically, going to keep fighting one against the next. The older one's going to serve the younger one. In other words, they told her like this, calm down. Calm down. You know what the kicking is? Basically, they told her, you're going to have one kid that's a tzaddik and one kid's a rasha. You know, that's not too comforting for Rivka. She went to get comforted about why there's killing each other in utero, and also they tell her, okay, you're going to have one kid a tzaddik, one kid a rasha. So the answer is like this. It's also another very interesting concept over here. The Rambam writes in Shmeina Prakim, it's called Shmeina Prakim, was the introduction to Pirkei Avos. The Rambam writes there's two types of Jews. There's a Jew that he's called, what's the Lashon? Chassid Ama'ullah, a very holy Chassid. And then he writes another thing, Hakevish Yitzvei, one who fights his Yetzer Hara. There's two types of Jews. One is, to paraphrase it, one is a naturally born, instinctive, good person, and one has to fight, capture the Yetzer Hara. It's not easy. He has to fight it. Those are two ways of serving Hashem. The Alter Rebbe says a very interesting concept in Tanya. In Tanya, the Alter Rebbe explains this battle of Yitzchak and of Yaakov and Esav is really the battle of every single Jew. Yetzer Tov with the Yetzer Hara. That's the fight we all have. And Hashem is telling us, you should know you're going to have this fight. You're going to have this fight. There's going to be sometimes the Yetzer Tov, which is naturally, instinctively good. You're going to have a Yetzer Hara that wants to do evil, and you have to conquer it. You have to subdue it. You have to control the Yetzer Hara. But these are two ways of serving Hashem. The Mefarshim ask a very interesting thing. And this is, in the legal system, something which is very much against Torah, by the way. Sometimes in the legal system, the defense lawyers will come up with a defense that the person's background was corrupt and they didn't have a good upbringing and they didn't have this and the parents didn't care about them and therefore they do bad and you have to excuse them. You have to excuse them. According to Torah, that doesn't work. Even temporary insanity is not a Torah plea in a Beis Din. Every sin is temporary insanity anyway, Chazal tell us. Because you're spiritually killing yourself. Why would a guy normally just want to jump into a fire and kill himself if every sin is considered suicide? Okay? But according to Torah, you can have a bad upbringing, you can have tendency to steal, you can have tendency to kill. That doesn't give you a right to do it. You, that God gave this tendency to steal or to kill, is given powers by Hashem to overcome it. It's a battle you have, but you have the ability to overcome it. You can't cop out, I have a tendency to steal, therefore you have to let me steal. Or I have a tendency to kill, so therefore if I kill somebody, you can't do anything to me. It doesn't work like that. So Rivka is being told, you have two levels of serving Hashem. You have a Yaakov Avinu, Chassid Ama'ullah, this holy guy, and then you have within you a level of an Esav that you need the Aveda of Kavish Yitzvei, of conquering the Yetzer Hara. And the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya another interesting point. A Beinani of Tanya is the guy never sins. Never sins. Not in thought, not in speech, not in action. Okay? In our situation, we'd call him a big tzaddik. But in Tanya, it's not a tzaddik at all. Tzaddik is one who kills the Yetzer Hara, doesn't have one. A higher level is transforms it to Yetzer Tov. But Beinoni means somebody who can never become a tzaddik, because you have to be born with the ability to be a tzaddik. A Beinoni is a person that never sins, and he's in a constant battle with his Yetzer Hara, and he'll never win. So the Alter Rebbe asks in Tanya, what is the purpose of a Beinoni's coming into the world? You're going to fight and fight and fight and never win? Why did Hashem do this? You always want to fight, okay, but you win. The Beinoni is told, basically, you're going to fight your Yetzer Hara. Why? What enjoyment does Hashem have from a constant battle that you know you're never going to win? And Alter Rebbe says this is in relationship to what later on in this week's Parsha, Rivka says to Yitzchak said to Esav, Aseli mata'amim, make me delicacies. Okay? I'm going to say it now, we're going to get there later. Make for me delicacies. What, Yitzchak needs 2 delicacies? One's not enough for Yitzchak Avinu. I mean, come on. Yitzchak Avinu. He needs 2 delicacies. So the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, Yitzchak Avinu is, the Kadusha godliness talking to the Jewish people. Hashem says to the Jewish people, I have 2 types of delicacies that I want from you. There's a delicacy called sweet delicacies, sugar, sweet things. And then there's, to use a shul expression, there's the hot sauce delicacy, sharp, bitter, people enjoy that type of sharp foods also, especially Sephardic Jews. They really like hot foods. It's also a delicacy. There's 2 types of delicacies. One's sweet and one's bitter. But you know what's interesting, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, God forbid if somebody faints, you don't give him sugar to smell. It's not going to wake him up. What wakes up this person? You give him smelling salts, something sharp, something bitter, that will wake them up. Sugar will not wake him up. There's 2 delicacies in Avodah that Hashem wants in the Jewish people. Hashem wants that we should be like Yaakov Avinu, but Hashem also tells Rivka, you have 2 goyim in you. You have Kadusha. A Jew is not composed only of Kadusha. A Jew is born with the Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Habamis, Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara. That is the 2 people within you. Okay? We all have twin personalities within us. This is again talking to future generations. Shnei goyim bevitnech. Every Jew needs to know, I don't only have a Yetzer Hara. I don't only have a Yetzer Tov. I have 2. And there's a constant struggle. And Alter Rebbe says in Tanya another remarkable point I would like to mention. And that he says like this. What happens, a person is davening, and they're trying to concentrate in davening. And a guy, years ago, a guy would come up and distract you from davening. Distract you from davening. Or in modern day language, the guys next to you are talking the whole time during davening, and it's disturbing your kavanah. Why does Hashem do that? Why does Hashem have a guy who has no free choice, by the way? I mean, the guy disturbing the davening, the guy used to daven in the field, and the guy would come, anti-Semites would disturb their davening. That guy has no free choice. Hashem is making it happen. Why is Hashem? And therefore a person thinks even more, I must not be davening well. Because if I would be davening properly, I wouldn't get these evil thoughts. Everybody knows the juiciest evil foreign thoughts come during davening.
Why?
Right? Everybody knows that. And a person can get depressed from it. Hey, that means I'm not davening. The Alter Rebbe says, no, in Tanya, just the opposite. If you have one soul, only one soul that's doing everything, and you're not concentrating in davening, and the thoughts are coming into your head, yeah, that means you're not davening properly. He says when two people fight, physically, okay? When one is using strength, the other one needs to get stronger. If the other one's not using strength, the other one's not going to you have to use his stronger powers either. When you see the other guy's getting stronger, then you got to do stronger. So the Alter Rebbe says like this, the fact that in the middle of davening, when you're davening to Hashem, you're doing your Kadusha is open then, you reveal the Kadusha, that's when the Yitzhak wakes up to fight you. If you're not doing Kadusha, why should the Yitzhak fight you? The Yitzhak is dormanted. You're not doing Kadusha, you're not doing anything holy, you're doing business. Why should I bother you? Why should I bother with you? Now that you're davening, you're doing Kadusha, now the Yitzhak comes and says, now I'm going to stop you from davening. So he says, on the contrary, the fact that we have a good soul and a bad soul, and a person gets these thoughts during davening, not only does it not show that he's not davening well, on the contrary, it shows he's davening very well. Extremely well. But yet we have to get rid of the evil thoughts. Okay. Now, there's another basic thing in this parsha. Ve'yav Yitzchak asesav kitzayid b'fiv v'rivka yav eses Yaakov. Okay, we mentioned this many times, but there's always a deeper meaning in all of this. If somebody would want to make a movie, a sitcom, out of Chumash Bereshis, they would have a beautiful movie of a bunch of dysfunctional families. Oh, yeah. Just look through Bereshis. You start off, brother kills brother, Cain kills Hevel. Go through the beginning of Chumash, you have dysfunctional families. In this parsha, it looks like Yitzchak and Rivka, a dysfunctional couple. Yitzchak loves Esav. Why? Kisayid b'fiv. Simply, he gives him food. He was a hunter. Gives a good steak, Yitzchak likes Esav because, he's giving you a good dinner. Okay? And Rivka loves Yaakov. Because Rivka saw that Yaakov is a tzaddik, Esav is a rasha, and so on. Didn't they ever sit down by dinner and say, hey, husband, how's the kids doing today? Well, this guy's good, this guy's rotten, this guy killed somebody today, this guy didn't kill somebody today. Don't they talk? What do you mean Yitzchak loves Esav and Rivka loves Yaakov? Well, first of all, also, to say that Yitzchak loves Esav because he gave him food is totally disrespectful to Yitzchak is the holy tzaddik. You think he's going to love Esav? And not only that, the whole thing doesn't make sense. Later on, when Yaakov comes in to get the brachas, Yitzchak said, hey, kol Yaakov vayadayim yedei Esav. It sounds like Yaakov. He says, Baruch Hashem. He says, please get up. That means he knew who Yaakov was, and Esav, he knew who Esav was. As he never mentioned Hashem's name, he doesn't speak respectfully. So Yitzchak also knew who Esav was. If not, you couldn't say, kol Yaakov vayadayim yedei Esav. That means Yitzchak knew who Esav was. So why is he loving Esav kitzayid b'fiv? And couldn't they talk to each other, the husband and wife? I'm sure they spoke about their kids. But the Arizal says, but it's much, I'm going to do much deeper than this also. What does it mean, kitzayid b'fiv? The Arizal says, Sayid b'fiv doesn't mean he gave him good food. Sayid means he hunts in the mouth. Yitzchak foresaw that the whole oral tradition is going to be based on Esav's descendants. Okay? Rabbi Akiva his father was a Roman convert. Rab Meir came from Ganeden. Shmai and Naphtali, the teachers of Hillel and Shammai, were converts. Wow. Unclis was a convert. You could go on and on and on. These were all Roman converts, descendants of Esav. When the pasuk says that Yitzchak as Esav kitzayir befiv, he saw that there was sparks in the mouth, in the Torah of Torah Shabbal Peh, of Esav's descendants. That's why Yitzchak looked at the future. Rivka looked at the now. Rivka said, right now, Yaakov is greater than Esav. Yitzchak knew that also. And the reason Kabbalah and Chassidus say, why did Yitzchak want to believe Esav, but want to bench Esav? Why did he want to bless Esav? Not, God forbid, he was an old, senile, blind guy that didn't know what was going on. He knew exactly who Esav was. So now let's discuss who Esav was in relationship to Yaakov, and now we'll understand why Yitzchak loved Esav and why Yitzchak wanted to bless Esav. What's going on over here? In Kabbalah it says, it's alluded to in Chumash, in various different things. There was a world, it says in the Medrash, at the beginning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Beina Ilanos Machrivim. God was building worlds and destroying them. And he said, Dein Lehana Li, Dein Lehana, this world's no good, no good. Okay, finally got it right. I mean, if you take the Medrash literally, that's mean. God created a bunch of worlds and not no good, no good, no, oh, this is good. Now, obviously, that's stupidity in the ultimate degree, because God does things right the first time. Okay? What do you mean God creates the world and said, no, it's no good? So why did he make it? So it says in Kabbalah, it says, there was a world of Tehu. Tehu means no order. There are spiritual worlds up there. It's not up, 10 miles up. There are spiritual levels of Kadusha where there was no unity between the spheres, like we said about Yitzchak and Avram. And there was what was called as fundamental aspect in Kabbalah and Zohar and Arizal, there was Shviras HaKelim. The vessels of the world of Tehu broke. There was too much or, too much light, too little vessels. You ever fill a bottle of glass, fill it up to the top with water, put it into the freezer, keep it there for a day, you're going to have glass all over your freezer. When you have too much or and too little keli, too much light, too little vessel, it's going to platz, it's going to explode. This is a super high world. This super high world, sparks of Kadusha, fell down all the way into this world. There's a rule in physics: the higher the part of the wall, the further it falls away from the original place of the wall. The place of the wall is here, right? The bottom. The higher part falls further away than the bottom part does. What does that mean in Kadusha? Something which is super low down here originated in a super high place. Okay? Therefore, the sparks of Tehu, it says as follows in Kabbalah. There were Rapach Nitzutzim, 288 sparks of Kadusha fell from the world of Tehu into this world down here. And in fact, at the end of Parshat Toldot and Vayishlach, it says, these are the kings that ruled in Edom before they were Jewish kings. And it said, Vayimlech, Vayomas, Vayimlech, Vayomas, Vayimlech, Vayosef 7 times. So it says in Kabbalah that refers to Edom, which was higher than Yaakov, therefore Esav was the B'chor. Okay, there's an advantage to a B'chor. Esav is the B'chor. He's higher than Yaakov Avinu, but that's in the source. In the source, all the way up there, Esav is super high. When it comes down, the higher the thing, the lower it falls. Which means the source of inanimate, animal is higher than the source of human. Which explains in Chassidus explains, this answers a fundamental question. We are humans. We are the human race. Okay? What do we sustain ourselves from? things lower than us. Inanimate, water. Plant, everything we eat is plant life. Okay? Fruits, vegetables, wheat, everything is, when we sustain ourselves from animals. How is it possible, Chassidus asks, the Alter Rebbe in the Torah asks, how is it possible that a person could sustain themselves from something lower than us? And the Alter Rebbe answers, because they come from a higher source. Because they come from a higher source, therefore down here they're lower. Yitzchak saw Esav the way he is in his spiritual source. All the Torah that was going to come from Esav, the greatness of Esav. Yitzhak wanted to bless Esav later. Why? Because he wanted to reveal that he was hoping. Rivka said it's not going to happen. Therefore she said Yaakov has to get the brachas. But Yitzchak wanted to bless Esav because he was hoping that giving this great bracha to Esav, he'll elevate him back to the source and he'll be super lofty. That's what Yitzchak wanted to do. Rivka says, it can't happen now. And in that respect, Rivka was right. But Yitzchak wasn't an old senile man that people think he was, and therefore he wanted to bless Esav instead of Yaakov, because he couldn't see. He didn't know who's whom. It didn't work like that. And in fact, that's why, by the way, the brachas that Yitzchak gave Yaakov couldn't come normally. He had to trick him, b'mirma, he had to steal it and do this, and he had to do crazy. Why couldn't things run normally? In fact, there's another interesting thing. It says, Rashi, later in this week's Parsha, Hashem dimmed the eyes of Yitzchak. Rashi brings down a few reasons. One of the reasons was, Rashi says, you gotta listen to this, this is cute, that Esav should be difficult in sight, that, Kadei Sheyitol Yaakov is a brachas. For Yaakov to get the brachas. Can you imagine? For you know how many years? Many years. This is what Rashi says. Why did Hashem make Yitzchak not blind? He was an Eilo Karban. Why did he make him not see? What? Perek Chod Zayin Pasuk Aleph. In the Rashi. So why? Because Yaakov should be able to come and take the brachas without Yitzchak realizing it. Mm-hmm. So by the way, it's a very interesting, says in Sfarim, why didn't Hashem just tell Yitzchak, Esav's bad? That's it, finished. Because it had to make him blind 20 years earlier. So you see from this, people that are into Lashon Hara, they say, you see, Hashem didn't want to speak Lashon Hara on Esav to Yitzchak, so therefore he had to make him blind instead. Because he didn't want to speak Lashon Hara. Can you imagine? Anyway, why did the brachas come crazily? B'mirma? Yeah. Because they're too great to be normal. They're too great brachas, too great of brachas to come normally. Why? Because it says in Kabbalah, Yaakov, that's a Gemara, really, a Medrash. Yaakov looked exactly like Adam Rishon. Shufra the Yaakov me'ein shufra the Adam Rishon, the Gemara says. The Medrash says. Yaakov Avinu looked exactly like Adam Rishon. Spiritually speaking, I'm sure. What happened? What got Adam Rishon to sin? Hanachash haya arum. He was sly. He didn't come with a normal thing. He pushed Chava against the tree and, made up these stories. He did it with trickery. Yaakov, in this bracha, was to rectify the Chet Eitzadas, which was also done with trickery. So Yaakov couldn't get the brachas in a normal way. He had to get him in a conniving, out of the normal way. Because super great things cannot come normally. We learned in the past, and we mentioned in this class also, but it's a remarkable concept. You know where Mashiach comes from? You know where David HaMelech comes from? David HaMelech came from Rus, who is from Moav, right? Who is the ancestor of Moav? Lot and his 2 daughters. You cannot get more incestuous than that. Mamish incest. Right? Incestuous relationship. Lot and his 2 daughters created Rus, which created David HaMelech and created Mashiach. Who is Mr. Rus? Boaz. Where did Boaz come from? From Yehuda and Tamar, father-in-law and daughter-in-law. Granted, before Matan Torah wasn't wrong, because Yibum, whatever it was, wasn't of an Aveda. But still, think about it. Rus comes from incest of Lot and his daughters. Boaz comes from incest of Yehuda and Tamar. Okay? And where did Moshe Rabbeinu come from? Amram, who married his aunt. Before Matan Torah was allowed. By Matan Torah, it says, Uchumish, an uncle can marry a niece. But a nephew is not allowed to marry an aunt, and if they do, the kid's a mamzer, and it's incest and capital punishment and so on. Wow. Okay? So granted, they didn't do anything wrong. It's before Matan Torah. They're allowed to get married. But it says in the Medrash, Amram and Yocheved and Matan Torah had to divorce. And they divorced. They were not allowed to stay married at Matan Torah. So Moshe Rabbeinu was legitimate. But come on, Moshe Rabbeinu has to come from something after Matan Torah should be forbidden. What's the answer to all this? Yeah. Super great things can't come normal channels. They can't. It's too great to come normal. Yaakov Avinu couldn't get the brachas normally. It was too great. If we have time, we'll talk a little bit more about that. It couldn't be. So coming back, Yitzhak and Rivka were not a dysfunctional couple. Okay, they had 2 kids. They knew both of them exactly who their kids were. Yitzhak foresaw the future. Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Meir, Unkel, Shmayim, and Naftali, all these great tzaddikim. The whole oral Torah is based on their teachings. Okay, I see it. I see the source of Esav. Yes, down here he's not good. But I'm great enough to reach his source. I can transform Esav into the super Kadusha level. Rivka said, sorry, husband, that's not what's going to happen. It's not time yet for that. Yaakov will elevate Esav when Mashiach comes. V'olu Mashiach b'artziyin lishpeit esar Esav. And we'll learn more when we get to Vayishlach. The whole meeting of Yaakov and Esav, Yaakov wanted to do to Esav what Yitzchak wanted to do to Esav by blessing him. And it didn't work, because it wasn't the time yet. So they were not dysfunctional. Rivka looked at the now, the present. Yitzchak looked on a hope. Let me try to elevate Esav back in the source. Let me give him the brachas. Let me tzayir b'fiv. I love him because look what's going to come from him. But okay, Hashem didn't want it that way. Okay. Now it says like this. In the bracha v'yitan l'cha, okay, in by Shishi, Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Chav Ches, v'yitan l'cha Elokim. Okay, what do you mean? V'yitan l'cha Elokim. So Rashi says, from the Medrash, yitain v'yachzev v'yitain. You should give and keep giving. Okay? Then, afterwards it says, okay, so first of all, question number 1 is, if Hashem is giving it, why does Hashem have to keep giving? He can give it continuously. He doesn't have to give and keep giving. Again, give it. Give again. Why can't he just give it? That's issue number 1. Issue number 2, we know that Elokim is a level of limitation. Hashem, Yudke Vavke, is Mahava, creator, infinite. Elokim is Teva, nature, limitation. These brachas, why does it say V'yitan l'choho Elokim? It should say V'yitin l'cha Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei, the essential name of Hashem. These brachas are lofty brachas. Why isn't he saying it that way? So again, it's late, but the bottom line of this is Elokim. There's a level of Elokim. Again, Elokim means, Rashi says, Gvura, might, power. Ayele ha'aretz means the strong people of the earth. Elokim represents din. It represents strength. There's a level of Elokim, it's too late to get into now, but there's a level of Elokim which is even greater than Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Elokim meaning giving and giving and giving in a continuous way, coming from Elokim, which shows it's a giving in a powerful way. Hashem means it's in a lot of way, in a great way, a holy way. Elokim means it's in a powerful way. And this is what Hashem is giving him, the brachas. Mitala Shemayim Mishmani Haaretz. All these brachas, you're going to be blessed, and all those things, they all come from the bracha of Elokim, because Elokim represents a power, a strength and power of might of Hashem in a much more powerful bracha than it was given before. Just one more last thing, because it's late. It says when Yaakov came in, he says, Re'ei re'ech b'ni, I smell Ganeden. Rashi says, when Yitzhak came here, Rashi doesn't say it, okay? But the Mefarshim explain, Ganeden came in with him. Oh, Rashi says, yeah. Shenichnas imei re'ech Ganeden. So again, how did Yitzhak know what Ganeden smells like? So the answer is he was there. He was there for 2 years, like we said before. If he was there for 2 years, huh?
Which pasuk?
Right before V'yitan L'cha. Pasuk of Zayin. V'yarach Zereh B'gad V'yavarcheu Gerei Re'ech B'ni. Right? I smell Ganeden. Nichnas imei Ganeden. Why did he smell Ganeden? Because Yitzhak knew what Ganeden was. Anyway, the point of this whole thing is we have to learn not to take the psukim simply that Yitzhak and Rivka were dysfunctional, and Yitzhak, somehow because Yitzhak gave him a good meal, he loved him better, and Rivka was, this naive wife. No, they knew exactly what was going on, and Yitzhak had his avodah to do. Because Yitzhak, it says, I'll tell you, we have 2 minutes. It says in the Gemara says, the Medrash says, La'asad Lavei, Yitzchak is going to be called Avinu. Why? Because Yitzchak comes from tzchak, laughter, enjoyment, pleasure. What pleasure does Hashem have? When evil is transformed to good. That's the ultimate pleasure. When darkness is made into light. When evil is made good, that's what Hashem wanted when He created the world. Hashem created evil, not that it should stay evil, but evil should become good. So therefore, that's Esav. So therefore, it makes sense. Now, who wanted to bless Esav? The level of Yitzchak. Because Yitzchak is the level of La'asad Lavai. Tzchek Asali Elakim. Ki Ato Avinu is going to be La'asad Lavai. And therefore, Esav wanted to do what it was going to be when Mashiach comes. To elevate Esav, and they told him, sorry, doesn't work. Okay, everybody have a good night, and Emir Hashem, Wednesday night, 8 o'clock is Halach and Tanya, and we should only hear good news, and everything should be good. Take care. Take it back. That means they were not having volume. We cut them off, okay? Okay.
So getting into the level of Elohim being above Yudvei
Vavke is very, very lofty.
Through kindness, might, and power.
Correct.
It kind of seems like the reasoning for why tzedakah is so high. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I know where it comes from.
if you say the I don't know how many people have a Chumash, but probably not many. But if you say the parak and the
I did that a bunch of times already. Yeah, you should do it more often.
no, it's just so because if I bring it and then I can take the notes.